Maryland State Senator Dahlia Attar has been indicted on federal extortion and conspiracy charges, along with her brother and Baltimore City police officer Calvin Finkelstein. The investigation dates back to 2020.
According to court documents, Senator Attar recruited the two other men to break into her former political consultant's house and set up cameras to record the consultant having an affair.
Now, if there was ever a headline or an opening to a local news segment that screamed that this was going to be covered on the AJW channel, that 100% is exactly it. What we have today is an indictment that was recently dropped by the Department of Justice dating back to 2020 in terms of the actions that are covered in said indictment, where we have a local Democratic Party official, somebody who is a long-serving member in the Maryland House of Delegates that was recently appointed to the Maryland State Senate, reportedly teaming up with her brother and a police officer in order to record an illicit affair in a political consultant's own apartment and use that to blackmail and extort said consultant in order to ensure that, of course, you get compliance from this individual. It's absolutely crazy in every possible way, and this is what we're going to talk about today. But before we do, I want to thank everybody who doesn't secretly record me in the bedroom over at actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Dahlia Attar, her brother, and a Baltimore police officer are all facing these charges. Federal prosecutors say this blackmail scheme surrounded keeping someone quiet during Attar's 2022 re-election effort. Now her political future is in question.
Shocking new details outlined in this newly unsealed federal indictment. Tracking devices on vehicles, recording someone in bed having an affair, all part of the alleged conspiracy and extortion scheme. Prosecutors say Baltimore City State Senator Dahlia Attar, her brother Joseph Attar, and Baltimore City police officer Calvin Finkelstein were involved in.
So the local news segment gives us a little bit of a brief overview of what's going on right here, and they also mentioned throughout the course of said segment that you had a situation where they were threatening to intervene with the matchmaking process for victim one in the indictment's daughter. Now, this might be confusing to a lot of people.
Prosecutors say it dates back to 2020. Attar, her brother, and Finkelstein allegedly put a tracking device on a political consultant's vehicle, secretly filmed her in bed having an affair with a married man, and then threatened to expose the video. Prosecutors also allege the trio threatened to interfere with matchmaking for the woman's daughter. The indictment includes transcripts of text messages between Attar, her brother Joseph, and Finkelstein.
So I think it's actually important to clear up the cultural implications of what's going on right here, because this is actually something that involves the Jewish community in the city of Baltimore, and the specific matchmaking ceremony that they're referring to is actually an Orthodox matchmaking ceremony, and essentially what these people were trying to do was not only blackmail victim one and victim two, which happens to be the political consultants and the married man that she was having an affair with, but in addition to that, they were trying to block off through reputational damage their daughter from being able to find a match within the Orthodox Jewish community. Now, the reason I'm laying this out is because a lot of people are going to say that this sounds very Mossad or Israel intelligence operation and whatnot, and the local news is actually very vague on the cultural impact that this has, but this blackmail scheme is actually very well rooted in the Jewish community in this particular instance. So I think for clarification, it is important for you guys to understand what exactly is going on, because in your culture, you might not have a specific matchmaking ceremony in order for your daughter at age 17 to find somebody to marry as soon as they become an adult. Get it? Got it? We all understand where we're at and what's not being mentioned by the local news segment? Good.
Attar allegedly told the group the video of the woman in bed with the married man could be the perfect way to scare her. Attar was worried the consultant would send out mailers to the Jewish community, focusing on her voting record. We have a way that could potentially stop her. Why not at least try?
So look, obviously for this particular representative, the Jewish community is a key constituency, and obviously Attar was worried that she might lose her re-election, which ultimately winning that re-election ended up putting her down a path where she could eventually get that state Senate seat appointed by Wes Moore. So that is why they targeted this particular particular individual. And what ended up happening was she recruited her brother. She also recruited the police officer, Finkelstein or Finkelstein, doesn't really matter as of right now. And they essentially entered her apartment, installed surveillance cameras in the living room and in the bedroom in order to capture evidence of this illicit affair. And the thing is, this indictment is loaded with text messages, WhatsApp messages to be particular, that actually document them talking about what they're actually recording. So I'm going to read a little bit of that for you guys right now so you can understand how pretty much dead to rights these people are if they wrote these text messages, because based on my reading, this is overwhelming evidence of guilt. So the indictment says, on or about January 2nd of 2020, Dalia Attar sent a series of messages to co-conspirator 1 stating in relevant part, 2 years later, victim 1 is still looking to screw me badly. I just want her to be a non-issue in my mind, and in reality, that won't happen as long as she is relevant or doesn't have anything to worry about, because I believe she's building things up, even small things, but in the end, when it's the right time for her to close to re-election, it'll come out. And even more reason why the lady should be afraid to come out with anything at any point. Now on January 9th, 7 days later, Finkelstein, who is the police officer, sent a WhatsApp message to Joseph Attar stating, quote, "We need to follow victim 1 when she is here," to which Joseph Attar responded, quote, "couldn't be more thrilled." On January 13th, 2020, Joseph Attar sent a WhatsApp message to Finkelstein saying, quote, "Got the info?" Finkelstein responded 13th to 22nd, which is a reference to when victim 1 was traveling from Israel to Baltimore. Joseph Attar asked, what time does she get here and where will she be? Finkelstein responded, quote, "I'm working on that." While in Baltimore, victim 1 stayed in an apartment with a family member of Finkelstein. So look, I am not surprised by the Israel connection being right here. Now, I'm not exactly 100% sure which side of the issue victim 1 was on, but presumably somebody who's traveling back and forth to Israel likely would be on the more pro-Israel side. So even though traditionally we do hear a lot about the Mossad blackmailing people to support Israel, it appears that these flyers might have been to basically attack Attar for not being loyal to Israel enough or being too anti-Israel, which is something that we've seen very often in American politics, and honestly, way too often in American politics, and this is the reason why you had Attar and Finkelstein trying to do the blackmail. Now, we also find out in this close-knit Jewish community that Finkelstein, the police officer, actually knew where she was going to be staying because they have some kind of overlap in family or family friends. Again, something that is not unusual in religious Jewish communities. Now, by January 16th of 2020, the cameras were actually installed according to the indictment, and Finkelstein, the police officer's wife, basically assured the woman, the victim in this particular case, that it was all good to go to the apartment, or actually assured Finkelstein of when she was coming in. So it seems like, in theory, you could actually expand this indictment to more people. And if there was any doubt that they were recording illicit sexual encounters, obviously the next couple of messages prove the truth of the fact that they definitely were, because we have Finkelstein, the police officer, saying in text messages that he wishes victim 2, which is the married man, he had that guy's stamina. Now, after that, Dalia Attar said that she doesn't want any future conversations on getting in, because obviously they know that they have gotten in and they're getting the videotape. You also have Finkelstein directing everybody to delete their WhatsApp chat message logs in order to avoid this from actually getting out in the future. Obviously, wonderful job that did in actually preventing this from coming out into the public, but eventually we end up getting into a situation where we fast forward to next year on March of 2021, where the actual extortion and blackmail come to fruition. On March 11, 2021, Dalia Attar sent a series of WhatsApp voice messages to co-conspirator 1 stating, quote, "Victim 1 needs to be warned before the mailers to the Jewish community start coming out about things I've voted on in the last 3 years. We're nearing my election. We can't wait until she does it already. Things as simple as anti-police things. She wants her daughters to get married more than she wants to screw me. There's a perfect way to scare her regarding her daughter's shidduchim. That's like the Jewish word for the matchmaking ceremony. I pronounce it wonderfully, by the way. Each mailer can do a lot of damage. We have a way that can potentially stop her, why not at least try?
Attar allegedly wrote, the indictment says in December 2021, Joseph Attar reached out to the man involved with a consultant and met up with him at the Green Spring Shopping Center in Pikesville. Attar's brother allegedly told the man, I have hours of you in bed, with the consultant telling him to don't bring Attar up anymore to anyone. Stay out of this election. Prosecutors allege Attar's brother then threatened to share the video. According to Baltimore police, Finkelstein was actually suspended with pay back in 2022 pending the outcome of this investigation.
We've worked with the authorities since 2022 with what they needed.
Thursday afternoon, BPD says Finkelstein has now been suspended without pay.
Now, eventually what we ultimately ended up seeing, as you can hear by this local news segment, is that the threats were issued. And in fact, when this originally came out somewhat in the public in 2022, the police officer in question was suspended pending the outcome of an investigation based on the allegations that were already public. But you guys have already heard what I told you earlier on in this video, which is that Dalia Altar was in fact appointed to a different position post this actually kind of getting out and about what was going on in that particular city, because again, Democratic Party corruption is basically par for the course. Who hasn't tried to blackmail a political opponent, a political consultant, in order to prevent them from releasing defund the police materials, which by the way, based on a further reading of the indictment, it appears that this is actually what it's based on.
Attar was pushing back on the charges and says she looks forward to sharing her side of the story. Her statement says the case centers on the allegations of my former disgruntled employee, adding, we have yet to see any tangible evidence to support the claim that I knew of any illegal actions taken on my behalf.
Now, of course, Attar ends up saying that, oh, there's no evidence at all that these allegations, or allegations as the super mayor would call them,
people out there are judging off of hearsay, false allegations, and not facts,
or actually in any way, shape, or form realistic or true. There's nothing tangible out there, but the fact of the matter is we do have the WhatsApp messages, and it appears that yes, these are solidly supported. Now again, even with the stink of this investigation surrounding her, she was appointed to that higher position by Governor Wes Moore.
Attar was first elected to the Maryland House of Delegates in 2018. In 2025, Governor Wes Moore appointed Attar to the state Senate, filling a vacancy left by Jill Carter.
Surprised it was this particular delegate, and the charges are absolutely awful in a lot of ways.
Political analyst John Deedy says Attar's future is in limbo since she's already facing a primary challenge from current state delegate Malcolm Ruff.
It's going to be a lot easier today to run for that Senate seat, no matter what happens with these charges.
Attar beat out Ruff for the vacant Senate seat during the Democratic Central Committee nomination process before Governor Moore signed off.
Now, of course, the attorney says blah, 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 obviously innocent until proven guilty. The allegations are in fact frivolous, but in reality, we can see in the messages that we have the threats being issued not only to victim 1, but also victim 2, who again was the man who was engaged in the affair with this particular political consultant. Now, of course, I will leave the question up to you guys out there in the audience. What do you think about this absolute mess? Do you think the fact that this happens to be like an inter-Jewish conflict that has spilled out into the broader Baltimore politics is relevant, or it's something that the local news media should have focused on a bit more? Or do you think that this is just par for the course for Democratic Party politics, and regardless of that particular component of this issue, even though again, I do think the cultural implications, again, blocking this woman's daughter from being able to be matched and get married and whatnot, definitely played a role in whether or not this scheme would actually work, do in fact have an impact. But of course, I want to know all your thoughts down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Democrats blackmailing in order to gain more and more power. Till next time.